Hello and welcome back. As always, hope you're doing well today and will continue to have success throughout this lovely day. And this video will be the first in a series to reveal the evidence in support of the idea that the Earth was settled by a culture from another star system about 4 million years ago. And we've had a lot of researchers and scholars who have gone into the past and examined the monolithic structures, pyramids, and cities way up on the top of very high mountains, the plain of Nazca and other such things, as evidence of visits by alien or space aliens. Well, I would submit to you that light years are a pretty far piece to go just to disembowel cattle, draw crop circles, abduct humans for examination, and disembowel cattle, as well as to mine gold. I'm sure if such people needed gold, I think they'd be able to find it somewhere in their immediate vicinity and not have to travel all this long distance on a visit? Well, no, actually. And the evidence that these people uncover only brings up more questions. No answers, just questions. And of course, YouTube is full of videos about the subject, and some of them are idle speculation, and some of them move pretty close to the edge of the lunatic fringe, suggesting all manner of things. All we have to do, however, is not to try to look into the past for evidence, but to look at the evidence at hand today. Because that's when the story begins to come out. Now, for example, I believe that in every human mind is some primordial recollection of something that's probably gone back millions of years. Maybe to the discovery of fire. In the beginning, when the first hunter-gatherers discovered fire, well, they didn't know what it was. They knew because it was warm and bright that they wanted it. They could, they could see how it would benefit their lives, and for a long time, there was a need to preserve a fire source in order to use it as a source to light further fires, because they had not yet learned how to make it when they want it and have it go away when they don't want it anymore. And what I'm referring to is the strange, inexplicable preoccupation with eternal flames. Greeks had them, Romans had them, and we even have them today at the Arlington National Cemetery. An eternal fire that must not be allowed to go out. I can't think of any other explanation, and of course there are other examples of evolution. There, I said it. Evolution. Well, one recent development that, and there are two things that involve dogs. One is a fairly recent practice that dogs seem to have evolved beyond. And I would ask anyone of my generation, don't ask what that's all about, if they've ever seen dogs chase cars. Oh yeah, we used to see dogs chase cars all the time. Now they don't. When was the last time you saw a dog chasing a car? Well, they've evolved out of it. And what's another word for evolution? Change. And some things have not changed over a long period of time. And that's the other thing that dogs used to do. They used to bury food in the yard. Remember dogs that bury bones in the backyard? Why? Well, they're domesticated animals, which mean they have masters who feed them regularly. So why bury them? And this goes back to the early wilderness period, if you will, when before great cities and cultures, where dogs had to bury their food because other animals would come along and take it. But today, domesticated animals, such as dogs, are fed daily. And if in an instance of animal cruelty they are not fed, well, then they don't have anything to bury, do they? But now they don't do that anymore either. So this is another sign of evolution, change. And of course, we have this eternal conflict between creationism and evolution. And if you recall, we talked about that in the piece on the Scopes monkey trial. Well, there are some dogmatic explanations of astronomical phenomena that are patently false. They are the Big Bang Theory, black holes, time dilation, time travel, and a few others that I can't think of right now. We will debunk these as we go along, but let's begin with the Big Bang Theory, which I think we've already covered that, but it's the complete reverse of the scientific method. And that means that instead of gathering information or evidence, developing arguments based on these discoveries or that evidence, and then forming and then organizing these to follow a logical conclusion. An example of that would be the triplet. Jack is an astronaut. All astronauts live in Houston. Conclusion? Jack lives in Houston. Now, we might say reverse that. And come up with a kind of a different conclusion. And that is that Jack lives in Houston. All astronauts live in Houston. Therefore, Jack is an astronaut. Well, of course, this is a completely false conclusion, because it would suggest that the population of Houston consists of nothing but astronauts. So, when we expose this theory as the pseudoscientific nonsense that it is, it has its defenders, though. It's the creationists who believe that the Earth is only 6,000 years old and that man cohabited the planet with Dinosaurs? Ooh. I wonder if they domesticated Tyrannosaurus Rex. Imagine the litter box they'd have to have. Well, anyway, the point here is that while the clueless experts, and a lot of these experts are pretty clueless, as we will reveal as we go along, why the Big Bang Theory is a fact. And you look at any of these videos, even on YouTube, or listen to radio broadcasts, like there's one that was called Radio Lab, and they started on a piece about the universe, and they mentioned, well, the Big Bang, that happened, you know. Well, it's only a theory. But now, when you consider the enormous body of evidence in support of evolution that may be found at the Smithsonian and at natural history museums around the world, and you present these to creationists, what about that? And you know what they say? They say, well, it's only a theory. Wow. So, the evidence that I'm going to produce today is, in the beginning of it, I'm sure that there will be more, and we'll have to add some more installments, but it is the evidence that we have today, which naturally is an outcome of all the events that took place right up until the moment. And the revelations are really pretty revealing. Well, revelations do reveal, don't they? Well, now, in the part back there that mother was a monkey, well, there's nothing wrong with that idea, except some subjective view that, well, we're too good for that. That's and doesn't that sound a little bit like spiritual pride? So without any subjectivity, without any judgment as to whether it's good or bad, female Homo robustus become Homo habilis were genetically modified into a very unusual stance. An exclusively bipedal stance, which caused the birth canal to shrink so that they could no longer carry babies to term, and therefore all babies, human infants, are born prematurely. Not very efficient, not very pleasant. And the event of birth, childbirth, can be very, very traumatic, and we need doctors and special lessons, and we have to be so careful that nothing happens to the fetus. Of course, once the baby is born in the United States, well, then the kids are just cast aside until they are old enough to join Murder Incorporated, the uniformed standing army and military that we regularly dispatch to kill people that we don't like. I think George Carlin said it. We have to protect the fetus so that they can grow up to be dead soldiers. Well, we have a horrible reality to face, and this is not where I want to go, because my message, I hope, will prove to be one of unifying the human race, of breaking down the barriers that separate us and put us back together again as our Lords initially wished us to be. Now, there are a couple of truths that are undeniable, and one of those is that energy is all there is. There's nothing else. And we appreciate the vastness of our own universe, but also accept that there may be other universes out there. And this is not, they would not necessarily be on an equal plane with ours, but there is no limit to size, either macroscopically or microscopically. So there's a lot to think about, but if we collect it all under the general heading of creation, then there's three things we must know about creation. The first is that in creation, everything moves from the lower value to the higher value. It's never lateral, never regressive. Always from the lower to the higher value. Secondly, everything in creation migrates from the simpler to the more complex. Well, that's obvious, because you can look under a microscope and see an amoeba, a one-celled creature, and then look at the mirror and see us, one of the aliens, and realize that why we have a population of between 50 and 70 trillion cells. And every one of those is a miniature human body with all the organs that the collective body has, and these are called organelles. And lately, it is, over the past 20 or 25 years, it has come to light that we're not controlled by our genes anymore, but our perception of the environment. Look around at the environment we have inherited from our forefathers. Four-flushers, well, not all of them. I mean, some of them were pretty decent guys, but we have this propensity to elect the lowest common denominators to the highest offices in the land and even in the world. So something is seriously wrong with us. Now, when dealing with the present, there's one thing that we have to understand, and that is that in creation, the item number 3, is that everything moves from the less adept to the more efficient. And that's one of the first things that we would propose as evidence that we humans are not natural creatures of this earth. We are aliens. Well, let's look at the evidence. Now, the Lord that lived in Palestine a little over 2,000 years ago, and who was known as Joshua of Capernaum, was the last in a series of lords, many of whom were Jehovah's, who strove to bring the Hebrews back under the authority of the Jehovah's of Israel. And this failed as well. But he did have 12 agents, and one to go to each tribe of Israel, because there's 12 tribes of Israel, by the way. And he told them, don't go to the Gentiles, don't go to the Samaritans, go only to the children of Israel. And as he was assigning his agents, apostles, agents, they raised the question, well, how are we gonna get by? We don't have any money. Because they did live in a collective group. Nobody really owned any property. They had possessions, yes, but not property. And so it was kind of an early socialism, which is, by the way, the ideal, natural form of government. Except it doesn't work from the top down, but from the local, the distribution of local socialist societies. They work very well. I grew up under a socialist administration. Would you believe that? Bridgeport, Connecticut. Look up Jasper McLeavy, a socialist. He's been in office for 22 years. He kept getting reelected because I guess he did a pretty good job. And none of us went to prison or experienced torture or any kind of terrorism or tyranny. So anyway, we have this idea that maybe, well, of course, they didn't have credit cards, and how were they going to get by? And Joshua just said, well, look at the poppies of the field. Look how splendidly they are adorned. Why, Solomon in all his splendor was not arrayed as one of these. And then the birds of the air, the beasts of the field, they don't spin, they don't sow, they don't reap, they don't punch time clocks. Yet the Father knows what they need, and He takes pretty good care of them. Which is a lead into the next part of the argument. And so we, as humans, how do we stack up against that kind of standard? Well, in the first place, we have to say, looks like the Father dropped the ball, because all of the earth's natural creatures are splendidly provided with fur, feathers, plates of armor, exoskeletons, natural coverings that allow them to thrive in their given environments, which are from way up the scale to way down, from the hottest deserts in the world to the bottom of the ocean, these volcanic vents. And life exists everywhere. Well, but we have to wear clothes. Why do you suppose that is? Don't you think the Father could have maybe given us some nice, rich fur coats? Well, maybe we had them, but we evolved out of them through this process of genetic engineering. And like the chimpanzees and the other ground-dwelling simians, we evolved away from tails. Yet, there are still some humans today that are born with tails. Okay. Well, we are also different with respect to the third item cited as a fact of creation, and that is we're very inefficient. Now, you've seen those evolution charts where they start with a monkey and then the next thing you know you've got a guy sitting there at a keyboard. Well, that's a lot of fanciful nonsense, but in there lies a clue. And that is that apes, gorillas, chimpanzees, monkeys of all kinds are more efficient than we are. And this is because they have an alternative bipedal or quadrupedal stance. They can stand on all fours. In fact, they spend a lot of time on all fours. Which means that they're efficient in the sense that they don't wear out quickly, and that there's a favorable distribution of energy and the mobility it drives. Because each limb only supports 25% of their body weight, whereas humans are exclusively bipedal. We get around on two legs all the time. And if you sprain your ankle, well, that can be an inconvenience. Break a leg and you're in trouble. You are helpless. So go ahead, break a leg, and, well, of course, you'll have to be taken to the doctor, and he'll have to put your leg in a cast. Not a Broadway cast, but the other kind of cast, where people could write little messages on there, get well in a hurry, or go bleep yourself, or whatever it is happens to be. And it takes a while for that leg to mend. And how do you get around in the meantime? Monkey walking, because monkeys and simians in general have longer arms and stubbier legs, and that's how they can conveniently shift from four-legged to two-legged stance. Well, also, another thing that's more efficient, and efficiency means that it can operate under adverse conditions, which means that if they injure one of these limbs, they can still get around on the other three. But you break a leg, and how do you get around? Crutches. Extensions of the arm. We're back to monkey walking again. And another thing that, you see Junior sitting at the table slouching, and you tell him, sit up straight. Well, medical research has said, no, that's not a good idea, because the human spine is not designed for a upright stance. It's better if you slouch a little bit. What do you know about that? Well, now, let's look at the evidence. What is the most common complaint among all people in the Western world, in Western civilization? Lower back pain? Oh, it's funny how these things come together. And what's the next thing that goes? It's the legs. Because we are continually under the relentless force of gravity, which is a resultant force. It's not a primary force. Because, as I stated in the, if I did, in the universal law of creation, or the universe, is that energy only wishes to combine with itself. And that the only reason we have gravity is because we stand on a firm footing, a terrestrial planet. that without which we would be sucked right into the center of mass. But there we are under this relentless pressure. And things in the material realm wear out, run out, or break down. So, now, the bipedal stance, the exclusive bipedal stance, causes all human young to be helpless for several months to a year, and possibly even longer. They're incontinent, they have no motor control, and they are so weak that when you hold an infant, one hand has to be under the baby's head because his neck is not strong enough to support it. But take the monkey, for example, the chimpanzee. Mama chimp bends over, out pops Junior, and he's ready for Freddy. He's got both hands and both feet, and he starts running around, experiencing the original sin because he is learning the ropes out here in the real world. The world that is ruled by the evil of reality. Anyway, human infants are therefore a very, very good sign of the unnatural sense that we have as compared to the Earth's native creatures. And look at the infrastructure that we have to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves, to shelter ourselves. And I hope you'll excuse a little crassness. But it makes a point that there really are only 3, or is it 4, functions that make the earth go around. One is eating. The other is eliminating, like feces or urine. And the third is copulating, having sex. And here now we come upon another difference between human beings and the natural creatures of the earth. Because you see, nature's creatures have what are called estrus cycles. And it's quite familiar. You know that birds and squirrels and all kinds of nature's creatures experience seasons when they go into heat, and you see those. I think it's really very funny watching those birds with their all pumped up with their feathers doing a little dance to tempt a mate. But, hey, do humans have an estrus cycle? No, I don't really think so, because we are so preoccupied with sex. And it's even become an industry. We're in trouble. But now, of course, going back to the point, we look at the world around us and we see these highly technical and highly organized cultures that exist today. Have they always existed? Well, I don't know. I believe so. But how do we know that? Well, now, history tells us that a low-order, relatively primitive society aspires to higher cultural attainment when it comes into contact with a higher culture, either through commerce or conquest. The Greeks learned from the Egyptians, the Romans learned from the Greeks, and now we have other instances of the same thing throughout our more recent history, with the growth of empires and colonizations and all that. But here's a question for you. Where did it all start? Did it start? Oh, of course. Of course. There was a young couple, you can look them up on the internet, too, because they're there, and their names were Martin and Osa Johnson, and they grew up in the Midwest back in the 20s, a young married couple who developed an interest in cinematography, making movies. And so through the late 20s, 30s, and perhaps even the early 40s, I'm not sure, they produced documentaries of the lands and peoples of Central and West Africa and the Pacific Islands. Well, I don't think they were out in the Pacific Islands during World War II, but these were documentaries that showed the environmental features, the lay of the land, the forests, mountains, savannas, the creatures that inhabit the place, the wild animals, domesticated animals. And each was different or unique in its own way. But one thing that was constant throughout were the people. They were all small tribes living in what we call primitive villages, completely socialist, if you will. They're collective societies. No one owned any property. But of course they had possessions. And there was a, communal society. That's what, that's how Karl Marx described socialism, a communal society. And in the Communist Manifesto, he identified the highest or the best communal society in existence at that time, and that was none other than the American Indian. So that we have had Stone Age tribes that have existed into modern times without any outside influences. This is the litmus test that proves the argument. So now we have to ask, where did it start? And with it, where did we get the idea that some of us are better than others? And this is not something new, but it's something that is so blatantly obvious that right in front of your face and you can't see it. Take Great Britain. Great Britain has 3 levels of society: the royalty, the nobility, and everybody else. And then look at the nobility and their vast estates and the servants that they had working those estates, the upstairs and downstairs servants, and their hidden hallways where they could get around the house without being seen, and who occupied stations that they could never outgrow. we talk about being Christians and worshiping one God, and I don't know if we've already mentioned the irrationality of that, since why does this God need to be praised all the time? Has he got an inferiority complex or something? Like I said, it's like the fat lady, or the woman who was concerned about being fat. Does this dress make me look fat? Oh no, sweetie, it looks just fine. So, now, talking about habitats, not only have we, compared to the natural creatures, who have relatively simple habitats, our habitats have grown into cultures. Huge cities and settled areas that are environments in themselves. Environments within environments. And preoccupation with the facts and progress of these environments, these cultures, has blinded us to the fact that we reside in the overall worldly culture of all living things. Therefore, we have despoiled the planet. I talk about the difference between the old days and today, especially with respect to the use of tobacco. And I make the point that when I started smoking, and that was a good 60 some odd years ago, why the instances of cancer were hardly what they are today. That I had personally never heard of air pollution. And we didn't have air pollution in those days. And we went to the sink and we went to get a glass of water and we didn't worry about fluoridation. And the air was cleaner and fresher and the sky was bluer. So we've had some pretty serious changes down through the years, until now we have an entirely different planet, and that is one where we have contaminated water, polluted air, toxic land areas, some that have so much radiation that they are uninhabitable and will remain so for hundreds of thousands of years to come. But aren't we searching the universe for planets that are Earth-like and that orbit sun-like stars? Do we plan to visit them? No, because we might have to find a new place to settle after we've already trashed out this place and probably blown it to kingdom come. Well, humans suffer from such a wide range of illnesses, infirmities, diseases, deformities, and defects not encountered by natural creatures, mental and physical. Now, there is one property that is exclusive to humans and is not found in any natural creatures of the earth, and that is the split personality. Yeah, it's called the tragic comic nature of mankind. And that says that our souls are divided. And one part is the higher, aspiring, God-seeking component. And the other is the low, base, violent, spiteful, and mean animal nature. Which is, call it old Adam if you like. Yeah. So there you have it. We are also one of the very few creatures on the face of the earth that willfully destroy our own kind. And we do it with relish and with a great expense of resources, of time. And one thing that is completely insane, it is so foolish that it's hardly worth mentioning, but we have global warming, and that mankind is responsible for it because of the emissions that escape the tailpipes of the cars we drive, or the exhaust from the jet aircraft. How about all the fucking wars? How about all the nuclear testing? How about the ceaseless violence and warfare? Today, believe it or not, there are 27 armed conflicts going on around the world. People killing people because they have something that we want, or maybe because they're a different color, or they salute a different flag, or they speak a different language. Whatever the excuse, there we are. And I would encourage you to watch some of George Carlin's take on that. It's all on YouTube, and it's all absolutely correct. So, the final a bit of evidence here that we will close, that I'll present in closing here, is the fact that humans are the only creatures who demonstrate mental obsessions and distresses linked to this tragicomic nature. Now, there is an exception where the animals, natural creatures, do go off the deep end, but that's when they catch rabies, which is a disease, and it can be accounted for. We can understand why it happens, and it's just a natural consequence of diseases as they develop. But we do it because of natural resources and territorial imperatives and all that other stuff. And so here we are, looking back on a very interesting past, which we have inherited. And it looks like we're going to go into a regular series because there's a lot more that we have to cover. But now you have a sense of the direction that we're following. And we invite you to come along. And keep an open mind. A mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. And again, thank you for stopping by. I know we did go into some excess time, but I hope that you will feel that it is time that was well spent. And until next time, whatever you do, have the best day ever. Take care of yourself. Be happy. Don't worry. Good always triumphs in the long run. And thank you for stopping by. And for now, so long.